Have you suffered from a herniated disc injury in the past and you're looking for ways to stop it from ever coming back? If you are, then this video hopefully will have all the answers you need. Hi everybody, my name is Will Harlow and I'm the Over-Fifties specialist physio here at HT Physio in Farnham. And today I'm going to be telling you how to prevent a disc herniation injury from becoming recurrent. Now, before we dive into the content of the video, if you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe to the channel using the link in the bottom right of the video, because then you'll be the first to hear about our disc injury and back pain and sciatica videos as soon as they come out. Now that that's been said, let's talk about herniated discs, the kind of things that people who have a herniated disc go through and how to prevent them from coming back. So in this video, I'm going to give you 5 things that you need to do if you want to prevent that disc injury from coming back. And these are the 5 things I teach all of my clients here at the clinic who have recovered from a disc herniation and want to do everything in their power to prevent it from happening again. And quite rightly as well, because it's one of the most painful injuries in the whole world in terms of musculoskeletal things we treat here. I think disc herniations have to be number 1 in terms of pain. And when we're talking about disc herniations, what we're really talking about is a disc injury in the spine. Typically it's the lower back, because I see people with sciatica more often than neck problems, but really disc injuries can happen anywhere in the spine. And if you get a disc herniation injury in the bottom 5 discs in your spine, it can press on a nerve root and it can cause pain down the leg, which we call sciatica. So that's the most common symptom. If you have a disc herniation in your neck, it will press on one of the nerves up in the neck and cause pain down the arm, which is like the upper limb version of sciatica. So if the disc injury happens down here, you get leg pain. If the disc injury happens up here, you often get arm pain instead. So in terms of a disc herniation, I'll show you what a disc herniation looks like. And this is a zoomed in version of the 2 vertebrae at the bottom of the spine. You can see that we've got the bones here, which are the white things. We've got the spinal cord in the middle here, and then coming out at each level of the spine, we have a nerve which ends up going down the leg if it's in the lower back. Now in the middle, this red thing is the disc, and as you can see, it's quite flexible. Now it's flexible because it's got a tough outer shell with a fluid center. Now, when a weakness in the disc forms, you can develop what we call a bulging disc, which is the first stage moving towards a disc herniation. So the bulge looks kind of like that, and you can see there it touches that nerve every time it comes out. Now, if that bulge gets worse, the entire center of the disc, so the liquid center, which we call the nucleus, can actually project out the back of the disc, and we call this a disc herniation. Now, it's not quite as dramatic as it sounds in terms of the injury, and usually they get better, but they're very, very painful quite often, and they can cause back pain and sciatica. So people who've had a herniated disc tend to spend quite a lot of time getting it better because they don't get better very quickly. They tend to take anywhere from between 3 months to about a year to fully get better, and they can be very debilitating. So the people who've had this injury are very eager to find out ways to stop it from coming back. Now, luckily, I've got 5 ways or 5 things you need to focus on to do just that. Okay, so these are the 5 things that prevent a disc from reherniating so you can avoid sciatica in the future. So the first thing you need to ensure after a disc injury to prevent it from herniating again is to make sure you've got a strong core. Now, the core muscles are the muscles that live in our midriff here. They're the ones that wrap around the middle of the body, and we think of the core typically as just the abs, but in reality there are a lot of muscles that make up your core, including your lower back muscles. And the core acts almost like a corset, okay? It wraps around your middle and it keeps everything in position. Now, if you've got a strong core, you have a much more stable base of support with which to move, and it can protect you when you bend and when you twist and when you do all the normal movements we do every day. Contrast that with someone who's got a weak core and they don't have much control in their middle. So when they're walking, when they're sitting, when they're bending, there isn't much to keep the structures in the spine protected. So if you have a weak core, you're at risk of developing another disc herniation because you've got an unprotected lower back. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that you have good core strength. Now, the second area of the body that you need to strengthen to prevent another disc herniation is actually your glute muscles. So strong gluteal muscles can help you prevent a disc herniation in the future. And the gluteal muscles are these muscles here. So they're the ones that live at the back of the hip. And when we're talking about the glutes, we've got 3 different muscles that make up that buttock region. And the ones we're most concerned with are the upper glutes, so your gluteus medius and your gluteus minimus. Now, those muscles are hip muscles, but if they're weak, what ends up happening is the spinal muscles have to work extra hard, and this can put stress on the spine. And in my experience, it can make a re-injury to a disc much more likely. So to prevent the chances of an additional herniation, if you can get your glutes strong, that can be a really good step in preventing this injury. Now, the third thing you can do to prevent a disc from re-herniating is to improve your spinal mobility. Now, a disc injury that happens in the lower back will typically leave someone very, very stiff in their spine. So they struggle to lean back, they struggle to bend forward, and they struggle to twist. So one of the priorities for the people I see in the clinic is to get their spinal mobility back. But I've met a lot of people who've had a disc injury and they've not seen a physio like me. They've tried to rehabilitate it themselves and their spine has ended up still very stiff even though the pain's gone away. Now, people with a stiff spine basically don't have very much movement available to them. And when they start to move outside of what they have available, which is not very much, they put extra stress on the discs and that can lead to a re-injury. So if you don't have full movement of your spine, if you're very stiff when you bend and twist, you are at a higher risk of re-injuring a disc. So you should prioritize getting some help in improving your spinal mobility, and that will reduce the risk of a disc reherniation. Now, the fourth thing that can help to prevent a reherniation of a disc is to avoid careless combined movements of the spine. Now, that sounds like a bit of a mouthful. What's a careless combined movement of the spine? Well, when we bend and we pick things up from the floor, contrary to popular belief, we're actually really safe. The times when it becomes a little bit less safe is when we bend and also twist. So 90% of the disc injuries I see that start suddenly involve not just a bend forward, but also a twist at the same time. So the classic is someone trying to pick up a piece of furniture, they go to pick it up and they go to twist at the same time and bang, the injury starts. Now, this is nothing more than careless lifting technique. So lifting things from the floor is actually very safe if you do it correctly. And the best way to ensure it remains safe is not to try and twist at the same time. So if you've had a disc injury in the past, you must make sure you're just doing forward and back movements when you're picking things up from the floor. That's very important. The other times when we do careless combined movements are during sport. We can sometimes twist a little bit further than we should. We often do it just day to day when we're getting in and out of a car, we twist and bend at the same time. All of these instances deserve a little bit of attention just to prevent a combined movement when you're in that first 12 months of a recovery period. So try and avoid a combined movement. You can twist on its own and you can bend on its own, but I would not combine the two. If you can just move in sort of a pure movement every time you move, you're going to have a much lower risk of injury in the spine and the disc is going to be a lot happier as a result. Now, the fifth thing you can do to reduce your risk of a re-herniation of that disc is to maintain and improve your general mobility. Now, when I'm talking about general mobility, what I'm talking about really is your physical activity. So how much you walk, how much you swim, how much you ride your bike. If you're a runner, how much you go for a run. If you stay active and mobile and healthy, you will have a much lower risk of re-herniating that disc. It's a fact that people who lead healthier lives have a lower risk of disc injury than those who are sedentary or who don't do much exercise, or who don't bother going out for walks, or who don't ride their bike. People who are generally healthier are much less likely to get a re-injury. Of course, you have to be a little bit careful with the things you do so as to not aggravate a past problem. But in general, those who walk more, those who cycle more, and those who swim more tend to have less injuries than those who don't. And that's no different when it comes to the discs. So I hope that's been helpful for you. Those are the 5 strategies I would use to reduce the risk of a re-herniated disc. Now, we've only touched on each one of these topics, so in future videos, I'm going to dive into greater detail in these 5 topics and give you a strategy outlining how to do each one. But this video is just an introduction to that process, so I hope it's helped. Please leave me a comment below if you like the sound of me covering those topics in more detail, because I'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't already and you want to get more from me, please pick up a copy of my book. It's called Thriving Beyond 50, and you can find it on Amazon using the link below this video. It has loads more info about back pain, sciatica, and how to prevent disc injuries like what we've been talking about today. Anyway, I hope that's made sense. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you watching, and I look forward to speaking to you on the next video.